Let me start recording here. Good evening and welcome to Ignite. We are just kind of tackling through some catch up from the weekend, and then we'll head into new content. And so John, your point of getting more on purpose about who you work with, I think there's a balancing act to it for me personally, right? And the balancing act is this. Remember, I said last week or the week before that I'm not a fan of something is better than nothing, because sometimes nothing is way better than something when that something is just a distraction or someone who's going to run you in circles and there's no real payday at the end of that. Right. And I don't mean to use payday from the perspective of it's all about the money, because I hope you understand that by now that's not the point. And it says it right here on the front of the Red Book, right? It's not about the money. It's about being the best that you can be. The idea, however, is that you have to make decisions about what's going to bring you across the finish line, what's going to just kind of stall you out. Right. And the idea of So I feel two ways about it. First and foremost, I agree that when you're brand new and you're just kind of launching, it's like, I know I did. I did and said yes to everybody all the time, right? And it was like well, I won't say it that way because it's kind of crass, but I said yes to everybody all the time, right? And so the idea of, you put your adult minds on, you can kind of figure out what I didn't say, right? The idea of starting to then pull that back down and say, okay, I do need to qualify people. I need to make sure that I'm working with people who actually want to get to the finish line, forced me to get better and better at asking better questions. It forced me to get better and better at qualification. It forced me to put ability in front of ready and willing, right? Readiness and willingness for clients is great. If they're not able, well, I'm not interested. And it started to help me make decisions about not necessarily right away saying no to people, but it allowed me to say a faster yes, and it slowed me way down on who else I said yes to, right? I didn't go immediately to the no's. I just had speed of yes. Like if you're willing to check these 3 boxes, well, then the speed of yes from me is pretty fast, right? We're going to be out. We're going to be focused on getting you across the finish line quickly. If your answers are slightly different, well, yeah, I'm looking to buy, but I have to sell something first, and I have to clean up my credit, or I'm looking to get something, but I'm still in a lease for 6 months, and okay, right? You're definitely a yes, but you're a yes, however, and that yes, however is yes, however, let's get that credit cleaned up, and then let's talk in a month and a half. Yes, however, with a 6-month lease, unless you're willing and able to walk away from your old lease in order to get into a new lease, or you're able to terminate your old lease and have the landlord re-rent to somebody else without penalty, unless you're willing to free up some capital and double pay for a couple of months, you're a yes in about 3 months. Let's reconnect. I'll set you up on something automated and send you stuff, and I'll check in with you every once in a while, right? So for me, it was the speed of yes that eventually turned into speed of yes, less speedy yeses, and then some definite no's, right? And sometimes that takes time, and I 100% get what you're saying. And at the same time, remember that in the beginning, you got to kind of claw and scrape, otherwise known as sclaw, claw and scrape your way to, I'm going to get this closed, I'm going to get that closed, I'm going to put this together, I'm going to put that together. I told you all when I first got into real estate, I wasn't playing around. It wasn't for extra money. I wasn't hoping to be able to take a good vacation that year. I got into real estate because my son had been born 18 months earlier. I stayed home with him without a job for most of that period of time, and I need to make money, right? It's like we couldn't live on one salary, and so I needed to figure out a way to make money, and so that was my path. So it wasn't a luxurious entry into a field that I had all this time to figure out. It was like, all right, how do I make money and how do I make money now? So I get what you're saying, and I think it's a balancing act. So my word of caution is feel the way you're feeling, be smart enough to know, float above it and know that these decisions need to be made. And some of them don't necessarily need to be made today. They can be made tomorrow while you're clawing and scraping to get those first couple together, right? Force it.
Good, thanks.
Hold on, we got a live mic. Force it until you don't have to, if that helps. All righty. You ready? Should we jump in? All right. So what we're going to do today is start with, we've been through, if you remember, we talked about what's the number one source of business for buyers for most real estate agents throughout most of the country. That was a live question.
Open house.
So that's the number two source. What's the number one source?
Their network.
Database.
Yes, database. Exactly right. Your database, your network, right? Your sphere of influence, whatever you want to call that. So your database is number one, open houses then number two. And we spent a lot of time on working with your database. We spent a lot of time on open houses last time. What's the number one source of sellers for most agents throughout most of the country? Right, your database is the number one spot for sellers as well. Now we're going to move into the number two spot for sellers for most agents in the country, which is expireds. Yes, Barbara, that is 100% correct. Expireds. Someone unmute and tell me, like, what, when we say an expired, what does that mean? What are we talking about, expired?
The listing agreement has edits, is over.
Yeah,
Has sold.
So the listing agreement was in place and is now over, and the property has not sold, 100%. Okay, I'm just opening my chat because I see that there's some stuff going on there. So let me just finish this intro to expireds, and I'll go back and answer some questions in the chat. The idea of an expired, is an expired different than a canceled? If something is canceled in the MLS, right? So the follow-up question really should have been, where do you find these expireds? I just gave you the answer. Most of your expireds are found in the MLS, right? And so is that the same as a canceled listing on the MLS?
No.
Okay, and so it's not the same, right? Because cancellation means that something was terminated early. However, is the result the same? Are both canceled and expireds opportunities for you to list?
Yes.
Yes, so Barbara and Tony are 100% right. Both canceled and expireds are the same in the MLS, in that the contractual relationship with the previous agency is no longer there. And so therefore you have an opportunity to have a conversation. Let me ask just one question so we are crystal clear about this. Talk to me about withdrawn properties in the MLS. Is that the same as an expired or a canceled?
No.
Right, so we've got lots of head shaking and lots of unmuting saying, no, you're all 100% right. Withdrawn is simply that. It's withdrawn from the market. However, the agreement, the listing agreement, the agency document is still valid and in place. And so withdrawn properties, you may not reach out to without risking tortious interference with an existing agency relationship, which is a whole mouthful of saying nobody wants any of that, right? So for clarity, MLS listings expire when? So the simple answer is yes, they expire on whatever the date is of the contract that was input as the expiration date, which hopefully matches the actual contract. But when in the course of a day do these things expire?
Midnight.
Midnight.
That's right. Midnight, not a sound from the pavement. Has the moon lost her memory? Oh, no, sorry. That's from Cats. So should we have a sing-along? That would be fun. So midnight. So if you are a night owl, you can kind of hang out and see what expires at midnight and prep that for the next morning. If you're like me, midnight, I see midnight one time a year, whether I'm down for it or not. I stay up till midnight at New Year's Eve. Other than that, midnight is probably an hour or two past my own expiration time each day, right? And so for me, I'd rather get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and check things out early, regardless of which way you do it. After things expire, you just have to make sure that they haven't relisted again, right? So you'll run that list and see that if anything has relisted. And then you have a short list, at least today, what today is a relatively short list of opportunities of sellers to reach out to. Are we clear on what expireds are and where they're found? Okay, good. If there's any questions about, do let me know. So let's talk a little bit about why are expireds. It's funny because there are some people who will say to me, oh no, I don't call expireds because I don't do that whole cold calling thing. And what's fascinating to me is A, the judgment around cold calling, but B, the fact that one would think or categorize expired sellers or at least owners of expired properties, right, as cold. I kind of think they're like the hottest thing out there. I think personally they're hotter than my database. Why would I categorize expireds as kind of hot calls? What have they done? They've raised two hands. What two hands have they raised?
They want to work with an agent and they want to sell.
So yeah, they want to sell their house, which is the most important hand that they will raise. But unlike the for sale by owner, they've also raised the hand of, we'll pay somebody to handle this. So I don't know about you, but if they've raised two hands, this is kind of what I see. I see people who are out there raising two hands going, hello, please contact me. I want you to talk to me about getting this job done because it's still not done and I need to get it done. They're literally waving you down. Truly a hot source of business. Don't you think? I know some of you do. I'm trying to convince the rest of you, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop on the screen for you some expired scripts that we're going to go through. However, before we do that, let's just talk a little bit about the setup and the goal of reaching out to expireds. Yes, this is yet another opportunity for you to do some phone work. Maybe you've noticed by now, right? The top 3 sources of business for most real estate agents across most of the country all require some version of you picking up the phone and talking to people. Sorry if that's a bummer, but it is kind of a reality, right? Your database requires you to be in constant contact with your database, including minimally 4 times a year on the phone or face to face. So there's some phone work there. Open houses require you to be in communication with people after you meet them at the open house, and sometimes beforehand if you're looking to drive traffic to that open house, right? If you're kind of calling through a neighborhood or whatnot. So there is some phone work there. And expireds are no different, right? There is some phone work. Here's the good news. Almost every single one of you has proven to me in the last 2 weeks that you know how to talk on the telephone. Because almost every single one of you at some point during the last 2 weeks has put me on pause and taken a call. I've watched you talk on the telephone. So here's the good news. You know how to do it. We just have to help you a little bit with what to say. And that's what I'm here for, to help you with this evening, is to just understand what to say so that you don't feel like it's so different, right? A lot of times people don't lead generate because they think that somehow it's completely different than just having a conversation with somebody that you know, like, and trust. It's not different. And the more the same you make it, the better your results, just by the way. Because if you make lead generation weird and you start to sound weird and sound stilted and sound like you're after something, people can sense that, hear it, and that they're not interested in continuing a conversation. If you call people because you care about them, and you call people from a place of contribution and from the position of helping them, well, they hear that. And now you make the call about them and they want to continue to talk to you because you sound different and you sound focused on them and their needs. It's two very different places to come from. I encourage the second. Mr. Derbyshire.
So this is going to sound a little silly, but you're probably used to that from me by now. So cold calling and calling expireds, this subject reminds me a little bit of years ago when I was in school and people said, I don't study. Who studies? And you know what? They study. And I wonder if you have any experience with that one way or the other. People love to say, oh, I don't make any cold calls. I don't do anything. And you know what? They do them. So just throwing that out there. Wonder if you have any thoughts.
Well, I think if I'm hearing you correctly, so first of all, to be clear, when I was in school, which actually I'm still not out of school. So when I was in formal school and then every day since, I study. I like to be prepared. I like to do well. I like the score of 100. I'm not a big 98 or 99 fan, right? And so I study to the point that I'll answer that question partially with, it may surprise some of you that I study before I see each of you. There are times where I'll spend an hour the night before reviewing the material. There are times where I'll spend 45 minutes the morning of reviewing material. There are times, if my schedule hasn't allowed that, where I'll spend 15 minutes making sure I go through all the material before I get on with you, right? But there is very rarely a time where I just jump on a call with you or stand in front of a classroom pre-pandemic and again and very soon post-pandemic, woo, that there's not studying that goes on, right? And I think that people sometimes lie about it because there's an ego thing that says, you know, I know this material well enough that, you know, who needs to brush up. I do everything I can to not operate from ego, but to operate from the perspective of what do I need to do to bring my best for other people that I serve at any given moment in time. And I think that my answer wraps that statement into you serving your clients, right? Are you studying? Are you making sure that you have the right information before you get on a telephone call? Are you practicing a script that you're going to use? I'll give you another quick example. Typically at family reunion each year, which is our convention, which where many of us are heading down to Orlando in a few weeks to attend, that happens in February each year. And each year that we host that, we will have, with whomever of our agents are down there, a big kind of group dinner. And we typically rent a private room someplace because there's usually 50 or 60 of us. This year is probably gonna be about 30 or 35 of us. And we're in a private room, we do a thing. And my job at some point in that evening is to stand up on a chair. I'm not sure why tradition has me standing on a chair, and yet I do stand on a chair each time, and just say a little something about our year, about who's in the room, about what's about to happen to all of us in this coming year, and something to that effect. And we were in business with one of our assistant team leaders who's now a referral agent in our organization, named Laura Nardi. Some of you know Laura. Her last year as assistant team leader, we were down in wherever, and I gave my little thing, and she said to me, she pulled me aside afterwards and she said, "Oh, you know, how did you get good at just kind of making stuff up off the fly like that? It's, you know, you stand up and say things and talk to people, and it sounds so well thought out, and it's meaningful, and it's this, and I just don't have that skill." And I laughed out loud. And I said, "Laura, here, I want to show you something." And I opened my phone, and I opened the notes section of my phone, and I said, "Here, scroll through those pages." And she started to scroll through the pages of the notes that I gave her. And she said, "Well, this is what you just said." And I said, "Yeah, no kidding. I spent 3 days thinking about what I wanted to say, and then 2 hours writing what I wanted to say, and then read it out loud 2 or 3 times. And then on my way walking to the restaurant, went through it in my head a couple more times. And then before I knew I was supposed to stand on the chair, I opened it up and just kind of breezed through it one more." Like, right? If you want to be good at something, studying is kind of required, right? And so I think, Tony, what you're talking about is people will say what they'll say, maybe based on ego. Because maybe they seem, frankly, I'm more impressed with someone who says, "Man, I have calls with my sellers this afternoon. I just spent 45 minutes or 50 minutes reviewing the market in each of the towns that my sellers happen to own property in." I'm more impressed by that. I'm more impressed with the people who study and then are honest about the studying, because they have the results. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Kind of. I'll just make a quick point and shut up. And that is that I've been in one form of sales for a little while, and I envied those people that said, "I do everything by referral," and it sounds really good. And I even tried it for a while, and maybe it has to do with my capacity to alienate people, but I need to be developing new relationships, and I suspect that some of these people, if not more than not, they say that they're just doing stuff by referral, but they're calling on leads. They're calling strangers. That's my
God,
point.
yes. And I'm not sure. I see Len Schwartz's name on one of the boxes here. I'm not sure if that's Len or Shelley or both, and I'm not sure if either one of them is listening. However, Len is a perfect example in our organization of someone who does exactly that. He works primarily by referral. However, Len will be the first person to tell you that doesn't just fall from the sky. It's hard work. He's got massive systems in place. And part of those systems is reaching out and having conversations, whether that's on the telephone or creating events where he can see people in person and have face-to-face conversation. But communication with people, you don't escape that. As a matter of fact, you don't have a by referral business unless you are really good at that. It may just not be to strangers all the time. But I think the other thing that Len would tell you is that he's constantly looking to grow his database so he can do the things he's great at to more people and turn them from strangers into Mets so that he can turn them into raving fans and create referrals from them. Len, you are there. I'm singing your praises, and I hope I'm not saying anything that you wouldn't agree with. So please just let me know if I have encapsulated your business properly.
Very, very kind of you. Where do I send you the check? No, actually, what you're saying is very true, and there are 450 people in my database. I could probably tell you something quite a bit about every 450, but my goal is 50 more per year, so that's 1 per week per year for the whole year. So that 450 will be 500 at the end of this year, and 550, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So that's brilliant, and again, the idea of part of the way you cultivate those 450 is by talking to them. It's not like it just automatically rains from the sky because you put those 450 in a database. You have to do something with them, and talking to them is one of those things. Excellent. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Lynn. All right, Marlene and then Bogdan, and then we're going to dive into the next piece of this expired conversation.
Okay, so just keeping on the expired, how do you overcome the seller being inundated with so many agents calling them?
I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. Give me about another 2 minutes and we're going to address that issue.
Okay.
Bogdan.
Yeah, I just wanted to attest what you said about Len. I was visited last year by one of his 450 clients, and they were still loyal to him. So I give him kudos to that.
100, imagine that. Even after meeting you, Bogdan, my goodness. Len must really have them wrapped around his finger if they met you and still went back to Len. Right? And so the idea of creating relationships, Tony, to your point, is, yeah, that's the win, right? And you get a choice. At some point, you get to make a choice. My choice was work with the strangers until enough of those strangers knew who I was, and I could start working with them as a database. So I used expireds and open houses to meet people to do business while I was building a database, so that I could start doing more of the things that Len focuses on and is so expert at, right? So moving forward in our expired conversation, do me a favor and just close your eyes for a minute and imagine that you have a seller who has been on the market for 6 months, who has shown their property umpteen times, maybe had an offer or two that for some reason didn't come together, and wakes up the following morning and gets a phone call from you talking about that experience. Talk to me a little bit about what that seller is feeling that may be a small obstacle in terms of you creating success there. What kind of feelings do you think that seller is having?
Regret.
Mixed feelings.
So there may be mixed feelings, there may be some regret. What else?
Frustration.
Frustration, yeah.
Yeah, frustration, certainly. What else?
Pain.
Pain, yes, right? For some of them, it's like, shoot me now. What else?
Maybe
Disappointment.
Yeah, disappointment. What else, John?
maybe they lost their trust in whoever they're working with, or maybe
Yeah, so they may be feeling like our entire industry let them down, right? Are all of these things potentially true? Go ahead, Tony. What else? Nothing. Are all these things potentially true for the owner of an expired property? Yeah, 100%, right? So here's what I want you to recognize. All of those things may be true. They may also not be true. So I only ask you to list those, not to find the negatives, but to underline for you that somebody may not be feeling like way excited to hear from you. And yet, I will tell you that my experience with expireds is that however they may be feeling allows you an opportunity, right? And that opportunity is to sound different, is to come from that. I keep talking about building a business that is based on and rooted in coming from contribution, caring about the people that we are looking to be in business with. Because you sound different when you make a phone call, like to an expired, when you call from the perspective of how can I help you versus how can I make money from you. Those are two different places to make a phone call from. I'm encouraging the how can I help you version. We'll give you the scripts in a minute, but from a mindset perspective, from a calling from the heart perspective, you have to know that you can help these folks and want to help. That drives you to want to be in communication with them. Now, one of the crazy myths of our industry is that everybody calls expireds. So I'm going to wrap this around to Marlene's question. I'm going to wrap it to the question that was asked and then wrap it to another version of that question, right? The question that was asked was, how do you deal with talking to someone who's been inundated with phone calls? I'm going to tell you, as a consistent and avid expired guy, what I found was that was hardly ever the case. We think in our heads that everybody's calling expireds, right? You're all on the Brady Bunch screen. Look up, look down, look to your right, look to your left. For most of you, none of those people that you just looked at are consistently calling expired properties. That's not a judgment. That's just a simple reality. Most agents are not consistently calling expires. And yet we think that we're one of 9 bazillion that's going to be calling. And I have found that to be less and less true the more time goes on. Now, are there some times where there are times of year or markets where somebody may get more phone calls than not, or more than just you, or more than just a couple? Certainly. That's why it's so important that you sound different. Most agents call and talk to expireds and ask them questions about their failure. Right? Question number 1. Hey, why do you think your house didn't sell? If someone's feeling badly about the fact that their house didn't sell, do you think it's a smart move for your first question to highlight that? It's kind of like you meet somebody on the street and they hold their arm out and they say, you know, for some reason it really hurts right here. And you say, where? Here? And push right where they say. Right? You're kind of accomplishing the same thing. You know there might be some pain there, and yet you push the button. That's not the path. I want to give you a different path. And so I'm going to discuss the path, and then I'm going to put maybe I'll put the scripts up on the screen first after I answer Carly's question. I'll put the scripts up and we can kind of run through the first piece of it and discuss it and then kind of go back and answer any questions. Carly, what do you have for us?
I guess it's not really a question. It's more of just like an observation. I've been dealing with a lot of short sales because one of my investors gives me short sale like leads, and I work with Sean Wilder and whatever. So I think from like a calling perspective, I think it's really, I tend to be a very compassionate person as it is. But I think by talking to people who are in really distressed situations, I think it's easier to kind of be compassionate and lead more, like all of them like love me. They're like, oh my God, you're the best. Like, thank you so much. Like there's more like appreciation. And I think like moving forward, I think if you start thinking about how you're communicating with these people and almost do it in a way of like, feel bad for someone or like treat them like, you know, like they're your loved one and, you know, they're going through a tough time, like almost treat it as everybody is going through something. And I think that helps like kind of lead with the compassion, and you don't sound like as salesy, and you're there like more to help rather than like to sell.
Yeah. If you put yourself in someone's shoes, right? If you spent 6 months attempting to get a result from something, that's like 6 months of banging your head against the wall, right? What all you end up feeling at the end of 6 months is like you have a big old black and blue on your head and you're dizzy. And you don't feel good. Put yourself in that position, right? What would you want? Would you want someone to call you and rag on your previous agent? Is that helpful? Would you want someone to call you and ask you why you think the house didn't sell. Well, at that point, you're like, you know what? I don't even know anymore why my house didn't sell. So why would you ask me that question? Again, it's like you're pushing on the pain points. Let's go through, instead of talking about what you don't do, let's go and talk about what you do. So on your screen, you have an expired script from Doris Carlin. Doris Carlin is a mega agent from Joplin, Missouri. Doris is an excellent expired agent, expired specialist. And there's a in that Google Drive, by the way, that I've put up in the chat a bunch of times. These scripts exist. So if you want to go and pull Doris's script or Ron Wexler's script or Tim Heil's script, I have all of those in there for you so that you can work with them. However, I think what I'd like to do, let's do this. Let me just kind of give you a quick example of what this sounds like, and then we'll kind of stop and go back. Who wants to, Donna, would you be my seller? Would you mind?
Of course.
That would be great. And so Donna's property was on the market for 6 months, and it did not sell. And she came up this morning for me as an expired, and I'm just giving her a ring, and here's how that's going to go. Ring, ring.
Hello.
Yes, hi. Is this Ms. Gilbert?
Yes, it is. Who's calling?
Yes, hi. It's Rick Scott with Keller Williams Realty. How are you this morning?
Oh, I'm fine. You're like
Oh,
the fifth real estate agent calling me.
oh my goodness. I am so sorry. However, I did want to quickly, I saw if I'm the fifth calling you, I'm sure you know by now that your property has come up as an expired listing. And I was just calling to see if you were still interested in getting a different result and getting your home sold.
Yeah, I am. Do you have a buyer?
Yeah, great question. And let's get to that in just a minute. I'm curious, however, had you sold your home, where were you going to move to?
We were going down to Virginia.
Oh, Virginia. Whereabouts in Virginia, if you don't mind my asking?
I don't know, someplace, north, someplace. I don't know. Any town in Virginia. Think of one. I can't think of one.
Got it. It sounds
Richmond.
like maybe Norfolk. Is that where you were headed?
Richmond.
Oh, Richmond. Oh, good. So what was bringing you to Richmond?
We have a job opportunity there.
Oh, nice. Is that yours or someone else in the house?
Well, we have a business together, so we were going to move it down there. Yes, two people.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. And I'm curious, well, when did you expect to be in Richmond to relaunch the business?
Oh, we were hoping for April, and now I'm not sure what we're going to do.
So April of 2022, this year?
Yeah.
Interesting. Got it. Hey, I'm just curious. If not April, is that going to cause any kind of issues if you're still here in April?
Yeah, it is. We're going to have to split up the family. Some will be here, some will be there. It's not ideal.
Got it. And so it sounds to me like that is not preferred. Yes?
It is not preferred.
Got it. So Ms. Gilbert, if I could be so bold, would it be worth your time if we could spend maybe just 20 or 30 minutes together outlining how I may be able to find that perfect buyer for you, say in the next 30 days, to make that move to Richmond a reality for you and still get you there by April? Would that be worth 20 or 30 minutes of a conversation?
It absolutely would be.
Okay. You know, I do have some time later this afternoon. I will shuffle some things around. I can be available at either 4:30 or at 6. I'd prefer if all decision makers were actually available when I was there. Do either of those times work for you?
Yeah, 4:30 is fine. Are you going to be able to get the house sold though? I can't go through another 6 months.
Oh no, I can well imagine you must be absolutely weary at this point. Let's do this. Let's meet at 4:30 if both decision makers will be there, and I'll outline what that plan could look like and what the expected results might be, so that you can make a great decision about whether or not to move forward. How does that sound?
That sounds great. I would really appreciate that. Yes.
No worries. You know what? It sounds like maybe the dog needs to be let in or out. So I'm going to let you go. And I look forward to seeing you. And just remind me, the other person that's going to be there, his or her name?
His name is Neil.
Neil, great. Well, I look forward to seeing you and Neil at 4:30. And if there's any questions in between, I can be reached at the number on your phone.
Alrighty, great. I appreciate it.
Have a great one. See you later. Okay, let me just stop this for a minute. All right, so talk to me about what you noticed. What did you notice in that conversation?
You try to be helpful rather than like salesy. You led from like a place of compassion.
Yeah, definitely leading from a place of compassion, care, contribution. What else did you notice?
You was digging deep in real motivation for the seller, and you find out.
So we absolutely stayed focused on motivation, right? I'm going to circle back to that in a second and do a deeper dive on that. What else, Marlene and Barbara?
I loved how you asked about the name of the other person who's going to be there. That was such a good way of confirming that they would be there.
Yeah, right. So and it's also a personal touch, right? I want to make sure that that person, whoever that person might be, doesn't feel left out. And I want to make sure that the person I'm speaking to doesn't feel like I'm leaving them out, right? So let's wrap them into the conversation. Go ahead, Marlene.
Yeah, you offered her the possibility of a solution.
Yeah, really, really good point, right? Well said. There was the possibility of a solution. Now, I didn't guarantee her that I could sell the house in 30 days. I asked if it would be a benefit for Donna to spend time with me so we could talk about the possibility of getting somebody in there in 30 days and still meeting her time crunch, right? No promises were made. She asked if I had buyers. I didn't say yes or no. I'm not going to overpromise and then meet with somebody only to disappoint them. However, remember, go ahead, Moses. So I don't want to say what I'm about to say until you all have an opportunity. Go ahead, Moses. What else did you notice?
One of the things that you had mentioned is to find out where they're moving. So you're generating a sale as well as you're showing that you are really going to help her sell the house so that they can move to whichever place that they want to go to.
Yeah, absolutely, right. There's maybe a possibility of a referral down to Virginia once I know that also, as long as Ms. Gilbert actually can tell me the city she's moving to. And the other opportunity we have is to have a dialogue around that, right? Part of the reason we go through, you may have noticed, it's 4 simple questions. Are you still interested in getting your home sold? Had you sold your home, where were you headed? What was taking you there? And when did you want to be there? That's the expired script that I'm going to encourage you to memorize because it's really simple. What else does that focus do? What else did you notice? Donna and then John.
So I love the fact that you picked up on where my mood was. You know, you kind of gauged that I was frustrated, hurt, didn't know what was going on, and you spoke to me in that sort of solution base, coming from care. You know, we didn't go into a whole salesy thing. I felt like maybe, you know, there was an option, and maybe you could help me.
Yeah, and you know, Donna makes a really good point in that because if you noticed, when she said, "Who is this?" and I said, "It's Rick Scott from Keller Williams Realty." Did you hear how her voice changed? It was like, "Hello, oh, it's you," right? I was not high on the list of somebody who she wanted to hear from at 8:15 that morning, right? And so don't hide from that. Again, be human in a human conversation. I heard that she wasn't thrilled to talk to me. And so I changed my tone. I changed my approach to attempt to be more compassionate, more solutions-based. When Donna said, you're like the 5th person who's called me this morning, right? I'm always really cautious not to apologize for making my phone call, right? So if you notice, I didn't say, oh, I'm so sorry to be bothering you. I didn't say that. What I said was, right, you could hear in Donna's voice that it was frustrating. So I just called that out. Oh my goodness, that sounds so frustrating. I'll only take a moment of your time though. And I went in a different direction. Had you sold your, are you still interested in getting your home sold? Had you sold your home? Where were you headed? Now, all of a sudden, it's not about me and it's not about her house. It's about Donna and her plans. It's about her future. It's about what excited her to put her house on the market to begin with 6 months ago. It's about launching a new business. It's about moving south so I don't have to be in the snow, right? I can extrapolate a ton of different things just from the simple answers to the very simple questions that I asked. John.
I don't think anyone's mentioned it so far, but she really isolated the problem. Oh, I mean, the pain point, which was the separation of her family.
Yeah, great pickup, right? Great pickup. When you ask questions instead of yammer on, right? So I could have very easily started to talk about Virginia and right? Because some people think, oh, I'll create, oh, I know, my kids went to college in Virginia. Maybe I'll have a conversation around that. Instead, what I would encourage you to do is to ask another question, right? You may just for commonality and conversation purposes, you may want to say, oh my goodness, I love Richmond. I'm curious what was bringing you there. The business, great. When did you want to be there? By April, right? And so now I'm listening to Donna's voice by April. Okay, this April, because it's the end of January, boys and girls, right? So that's why I asked that question. Let's get clarity around that, which just kind of underlines for Donna, yes, we need to, we wanted to be there. There's urgency here. And so now Donna hears me recognizing that urgency and offering a solution based on that urgency. However, what John just pointed out was the question I asked, and this had less to do with what Donna said and more to do with how Donna said what she said. In listening to her, it sounded like that was a real problem. So if it's truly a problem, let's find out about that problem. So the question I asked was something to the effect of, if you're not there in that specific time frame, does that cause an issue? And what she shared with me was what? Yeah, it does. Because now we have to start splitting up the family. And that's like, I don't want to do that. Wow. Understood. Understood. I might have said, you know what? I absolutely can't blame you. Yeah, that seems like something we need to solve. Go ahead, Jorge.
Yes, I wanted to ask, why is what is taking you there question so important to ask in that or at that moment?
Yeah, great question. Can anyone answer that? What are your thoughts on that? I'll open that to the room. Why is it so important to go in the direction of where were you headed?
Actually,
what's their motivation?
What is taking you there?
Oh,
Yeah.
so what is taking you there, right?
Yes.
Because we always want to go 3 deep, right? We're going to start with where were you headed? Because now we're future pacing, right? This is all a version of future pacing. You want to take the person you're talking to and point them in the direction of where they want to go. And what most agents do is they point them backwards. They have them look in the rearview mirror. Why didn't your house sell? How did you find that agent? Oh goodness. So, did you have any offers? That's all rearview mirror. Some of that might be relevant, but it's not relevant to me right now because, and this is really important, I want you to remember you have one goal when you call an expired. What is that one goal?
An appointment.
That's exactly right, Barbara. The goal is to get an appointment for face-to-face. Too often we think the goal is to impress or to tell them what we know or to list the property. Guess what? You don't list property over the telephone. You do that face-to-face. And so the only goal we have is to get the appointment. And the fastest way to the appointment is to sound different, come from contribution, and bring them through a question and answer experience that reminds them why they thought this was a good idea to be a seller to begin with. I want Donna to relive the thought process of, it's cold here, it's warmer there, we could grow the business bigger and better down there. Let's put the house on the market. Let's move to Virginia. Let's relaunch the business. A year after we move there, the business is going to be sailing high. We're going to be in this great new place. We're going to, right? I want her to relive all of that decision-making process in her head with me on the phone, because it puts her in a position when I offer her a solution and some hope, it puts her in a position to want to take that solution, or at least listen to that solution, because it sounds like there may be hope at the end of that tunnel. Right? It's not about how many homes I've sold. It's not about I'm a top producer. It's like none of that matters, because it's all about me. What's relevant is, where are you, potential listing client, expired home owner? Where are you and where do you want to go? And together, can we figure out a solution to get you there? Tony.
So kind of a small thing, but it's been my experience, and it's taken me a long time to even get a clue on this. You did it. Slow down your speech. It's really easy to like talk really fast because you kind of want to get through the phone call, and they want to get you off the phone too. But if you slow down the speech, it kind of forces them to it almost gives them a moment to realize that they're talking to a human being. And I think your chances of actually engaging them go up a lot.
Yeah, 100%. And remember, mirror and matching when it comes to having conversations, either on the phone or in person, mirror and matching is important. Donna wasn't doing cartwheels, right? So if I was like, hi, how are you? It's smiley, happy, cheery, clown face Rick today, right? And she's like, yeah, you know what? I'm not feeling that this morning, dude. Thanks so much. It just comes across as slick. I've said that before. I'll say it again. It comes across as slick. It comes across as self-serving. When instead, if you slow it down, your tone, your volume. I'll give you an extreme example. If you've ever been to a wake, right? There's a mood at a wake. If you don't read the room and walk into a wake like with, the music on your phone kind of going on speakerphone, kind of doing a little dance. Hey, everybody, what's happening? Hey, why so glum? Right? You've got to know the room. Expireds is the same thing. Don't assume the room, right? Don't assume that Donna's going to be down in the dumps or frustrated or whatnot. Ask questions and listen and be informed by the things she says and the way she says them, and then adjust. Make sense? Okay. Marion, did you have a question? I see you're unmuted as well. No? Okay. John, go ahead.
I just thought of a quick question. I don't know if you ever mentioned it, but do you ever try to like intentionally find out the person's dish profile on the first call, or is that like a second call or a follow-up call type of thing?
The answer, for me, the answer is yes. I'm always looking for clues about who I'm speaking to, always. There are scripts that exist where you can ask kind of certain questions, and depending on the speed of depending on the answers, you may get more information. I do it far less formally, right? I kind of listen to the pace of someone's speech. I kind of listen to the volume of someone's speech and see if I can get some clues there. I kind of listen to the answers to the questions. If Donna said to me, Virginia, versus I'm moving to, 46th Street and on the corner of Jones in Richmond, right around the corner from, from the city hall and like I may get some ideas that she's a little more detail oriented than not, right? So depending on how she says things, I'll start to glean some of that information. However, in all honesty, even though I'm always listening for those clues, in an expired call, what's more important to me is to understand what's important to her and why. Jorge, you asked before, why do you ask the follow-up questions? Because it's not enough to just know the what. The follow-up questions get you to the why, and the why it's important to her. Right? Where are you going? Virginia. Okay, well, I could use that later on. There's not a whole lot for me to go on with, I'm going to Virginia. Why is it important? What's taking you to Virginia? Why is that important? What happens if you don't, like, when did you want to be there? What happens if you don't meet the deadline? All of those things describe the why and describe more of the emotion around the failure to sell than just the reason to sell, if that explains a little more from your question earlier. Anna.
I'm practicing expired scripting every day with my partners. And I mean, we're going through different scripts. And one of the questions that we asking for expired is, was your previous agent determined why exactly your house didn't sell? And what is your thoughts why your house didn't sell? Do you think it's sincere to ask, or it should be like for appointment, or we should skip it? Like, what is your opinion?
Yeah, great question. I can tell you that my personal opinion, based on my experience as a successful expired guy, is that question for me is best saved for face-to-face in the appointment. Do I want to know their thoughts about why they perhaps didn't have success? Yes. But guys, I want to be clear. What I just did with Donna, that's pretty much my expired call, right? And I think the longer you're on the phone, the less likely you are to get an appointment. So for me, it's, are you still interested in selling your home? And Donna could have said yes, no, or go to hell. Any of those answers, I would have pivoted to, I understand, I'm curious, had you sold your home, where were you headed? I want to immediately move to something that's personal and relevant to Donna that has nothing to do with the failure, right? So it's future, it's looking ahead. Where were you headed? And then I'm going to go and do what was taking you there? When did you need to be there? And then close for the appointment. It can literally be that simple. If more and more and more gets added onto it, you may be experiencing the fact that you're having the appointment before the appointment. You're having the appointment on the telephone. There's no reason for them to say, yes, I'll come over later on to have a conversation, because you keep giving them all the information that they ask for on the telephone. Right? So one of the scripts that I used to use when someone would start asking questions is, again, I would use the fact that they were asking questions and pivot to a close. Wow, Donna, it sounds like you have lots of questions, and it sounds like we can have a really robust conversation. So I'm just curious, I mentioned 4:30 or 6 o'clock. Are either of those two times available that we could sit down and have a face-to-face conversation? I promise to get you answers to all of those questions when I see you. Don't fall into the trap of, okay, let me tell you how smart I am, so let me answer all those questions, right? Instead, pivot for the appointment. Wow, I'm so glad I called. It sounds like you have lots of questions that we can go through. Wow, I'm so glad I called. That was another one of my favorites with expireds. My goodness, thank you for sharing that. I am so glad I called today. Donna, what else?
No, I just wanted to underscore what you just said with the questions don't really change. That is the script. You and I and other people who have seen us do this in the room, you know that whether I'm happy, whether I'm sad, whether my grandchild is coming, whether my mom just passed away, doesn't matter what scenario I come up with, Rick's questions are exactly the same. Tone and pace may change slightly for appropriate reasons, after asking the questions about my motivation. But the questions are exactly the same, no matter what the person on the other side says.
Yeah, and I'll give you a really interesting example of that. I can't remember who it was. One of your colleagues told me a story one time where she was calling expireds and called someone and kind of was going through the expired script and said, I see that your home was an expired listing this morning. I'm curious, are you still interested in getting your home sold? And the woman on the other end of the phone said, well, I am. And frankly, I think it's important now more than ever because my husband just died last week. Right. And kind of laid that out in front of the agent. And I was so fascinated to listen to where that all went, thinking in my head, right, okay, how many people would panic and say, oh my goodness, I am so sorry. You know what, why don't I call back? And maybe it wasn't even like last week. I think it was like, my husband died on Tuesday and it was Friday or something like that. I mean, it was a recent experience. And so what she did was she trusted in the fact that being human and following a structured script is how we best help people. She said, oh my goodness, I am so terribly, terribly sorry for your loss. I'm curious, selling your home, I'm curious, once you sell your home, where are you headed now? And she took that pause, she brought it down, she expressed sorrow for that person's loss and used the script, tweaked a little bit, right? It wasn't about had you sold your home, it was now that you're going to continue on the path of selling your home. So when your home sells, where is it you're headed? What are your plans? And she told her, said, oh, wow, that's, what's bringing you there? Oh, well, I'm going to be moving closer to my grandchildren. Oh, that sounds wonderful. I'm curious, how many grandchildren are there? Oh, I have 6. Oh, that sounds lovely. I'm curious, when is it that you wanted to be there? Well, we were hoping to go together and we're hoping to be there, so that we didn't have to spend another winter up here in Connecticut. I understand. It sounds to me like with all that's occurred, that getting you down closer to family might be more urgent than maybe it was before. Would you agree with that? Yes. Excellent. If I could show you a path by having your home on the market and finding a buyer in the next 30 or so days that could get you down to your grandchildren as quickly as humanly possible, would that be worth a 20 or 30-minute conversation? And so my point is, she got the appointment and got the listing. And so how many of us would have freaked out with, my husband just died, yesterday or 3 days ago or last week or whatnot, versus recognizing that that's just another moment to be human, express sorrow and concern, and then offer some assistance, right? She didn't want to be there by herself. She didn't want to be there in the winter. She wanted to be down with her grandchildren, not in the cold. All right, well, if we could spend some time together, if we could spend like 20 minutes together or 30 minutes together and outline a plan that would accomplish that for you, would that be worth your time? Guys, you have to ask questions that make sense for them to say yes to, right? Saying something like, well, so how about having an appointment with me? Well, what's compelling about that? You need to structure it in such a way where the yes is almost a no-brainer. Wow, I am so glad I called today. It sounds like getting your home back on the market and getting it sold as quickly as possible would be crazy beneficial to you. If we could spend 20 or 30 minutes together later today and outline a plan that would get you closer to your see, now again, when you ask those questions, Now, when you're asking the question, you're bringing that back. I'm not saying get you where you want to go. I'm saying get you down to Atlanta, closer to those 6 lovely grandchildren. I'm curious, and I apologize for being off topic, but what are the ages of your grandchildren? Oh, I have, 13 right on down to 18 months. Oh, how wonderful. Kind of one in every bracket. That sounds so great. So great. And it sounds like you really enjoy being a grandmother. I can't wait to meet you in person so that we talk a little bit more about your grandchildren, as well as a path forward to get you down and closer to them as quickly as possible. Right? That information becomes how I position our meeting. We're not talking about listing the house. We're talking about sitting down and orchestrating a move out of the cold and closer to her grandchildren. Make sense? What other questions do you have? Comments, concerns?
Hi, Rick. I would like to know where would the best place to meet them? Where would that be?
So where are you having the appointment when you get the appointment?
Yes, depending on the situation, where would the best place to have the appointment be?
Yeah, so I prefer appointments in the office. However, if it's an expired and you've not been in their house, which is oftentimes the case, you can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, head there, view the property, and have the appointment. So it's an either or. You can kind of play that one by ear. For expireds, for me, it was almost always at the house. Even though most of my appointments were in the office, with expireds there was a slightly different process, simply because I wasn't in a lot of those houses. And so in order to really make sure that we were making good decisions together, I needed to be in the house. Does that help?
Yes, it helps. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Rick,
Yes, Lisa.
do you take a listing contract with you, or do you go back once you've seen the house? And, because it could be a weird floor plan, it could, been in much worse condition than it was before. So it might, change the price. I mean, how do you work that? Or do you do it all then and there?
So with expireds, see, my process is different depending on whether we're talking about an expired or not. Because as most of you know, I was always a 2-step listing agent with non-expires. And so if someone called, I would go and view the property and then ask them to come to the office for the follow-up within 24 hours or so. With expires, my process was different. It was because the property was on the market. I have pictures, I have a video, I have all the information I need, even if I've never been in it, because it was on the market prior. So I just utilize all that last stuff. And if it's slightly different when I get there, we just have a conversation and we make adjustments to the number. All right, but for me, I'm going there to list the property with an expired. I'm not going there to chit chat or view, or I'm going to make any adjustments on the fly, going there to list the property.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense. So
yeah.
Great.
What else? So let's talk about this real quick, because it will flavor your appointment, right? And knowing full well we haven't gone through the listing consultation, right? So we're coming to that. We're going to start the buyer consultation tomorrow or Thursday, and then next week the listing consultation. And so we're moving towards what that appointment looks like. However, I want you to recognize that there is, well, let's do this. Let's make a list of like the top 14 reasons why a house doesn't sell. What's number 1?
Price.
Price, right? So the number 1 reason a house doesn't sell is price. What's number 2?
Promotion.
What's number 2?
Promotion?
Price.
Oh, price. That's exactly right. Let's keep making the list. What's number 3?
Price.
You got it. You're catching on. Number 4, 5, 6, 7, 18, 23. Right? The simple reality is that homes don't sell for one reason, and that's because they are mispriced. At the right price, any property will sell. Anything else that you can come up with as a reason why a house doesn't sell is actually addressed via price. Hey, it's on a double yellow line. Okay, well, at a certain price, guess what? The double yellow line goes away. Well, it's on the railroad tracks. Yep, and at a certain price, the railroad track noise goes away because a certain family that needs that size house and can't afford that size house will end up buying that size house for less money because of some of the issues that might be around it. Well, it's in bad condition. Yep, that's correct. And at a certain price, someone will buy that house and fix it up. Well, the pictures that the last agent took were terrible. Yep. And yet, have you ever seen a property with terrible pictures sell in 24 hours with multiple offers? I have. You know why? Because it was priced properly, right? So all of those things that we want to tell ourselves are reasons why properties don't sell. They're not reasons why properties don't sell. Properties don't sell for just one reason. Why are we having this conversation as it relates to an expired appointment?
Because it wasn't priced right.
That's exactly right, because you get to go and have a conversation to make sure that there's some sort of a different price when it comes on the market. Because that house didn't sell, not because the last agent was terrible, not because the market was different. All those things might be true. Maybe they did have a terrible agent. Maybe the market was different, right? Maybe they have an up driveway or a down driveway, or it's whatever, poor condition. If the reason it didn't sell is because the price was too high. And so just recognize that part of that conversation with the expired is to help them understand. And the good news, and here's a script, right? The good news is we already know the price that doesn't work. So when you sit down and begin that conversation, when you get around to having a conversation around the numbers that drive the success, you get to start right there. Hey, great news. You've already road tested a number or a couple of numbers that we know don't work. So let's focus in on numbers that actually do work to bring you across the finish line. Make sense? What are the questions, concerns, or issues do you want to have a conversation around expireds before we move on to our last two sources of business? Anything else? Go ahead,
With a
Barbara.
lot of expireds now, their prices may have actually come to what they were before.
Say that one more time.
So if somebody's house didn't sell 6 months ago at that price, it could sell today at that price.
Well, yes, so that is true. If you're calling on old expireds, right, there may have been market movement from the time that they became an expired to the time you're calling them. That is 100% true, right? The point I was making was if you're contacting today expireds, folks that just expired last night, the price was last night. The market didn't change from last night till today, right? So clearly that was out of whack with what the market was saying. However, old expireds, that's 100% possible. Anything else? Yes, John.
Forgive me if we already gone over this, but did we go over how to get like the numbers for the expireds?
We did not, and so that's a great question. My answer to that is if you are going to be like a heavy expired person, there's lots of different ways you can get numbers. There's fewer and fewer efficient and effective ways for you to get numbers nowadays. So my advice, what I encourage you to do if expireds is going to be one of the main ways that you create business for yourself, buy into some kind of a system that will scrub and give you the numbers. Buy them. Yes, I know it'd be lovely if we could get them for free. However, experience tells me, see, back when I was doing expireds, in the area I was doing expireds in, we just called the sellers ourselves to make appointments to see properties. So the seller's home phone number was right in the listing. So when it expired, I just called the number on the listing, right? That's not the way things work anymore because we got fancy with showing time, right? And so now we don't have that information available to us quite as readily. Are there free ways to do it? Are there places you can look things up and get numbers and things? Yes. And, you know, for those of you who use some of the free stuff, you can put it in the chat if you want to share with each other. However, the point I'm making here is if you are going to go all in on expireds, the time that you will spend and waste attempting to find valid numbers almost makes the search for those numbers or the pursuit of those numbers for expireds take more time than it's worth. So there are definitely ways you can find some of those. If you're going to be an expired person, I encourage you, just bite the bullet and have a system, buy a system. There are lots of companies out there who will run the expireds for you and scrub the telephone numbers so that you just get a list of numbers each morning for the expireds in the towns that you so choose. It's way worth it so that you can then spend the time on the phone. Because here's what I've noticed. A lot of agents who really want to go hot and heavy with expireds spend all of this time obtaining numbers thinking that that's the work. That's not the work, right? That's the 10 or 12 or $15 an hour work that we were talking about before in terms of dollars per hour. Your $200, $300, $400 an hour work is securing an appointment and going, taking a listing and getting it sold. That's what you should be spending your time on. So I caution you, if it's onesie twosie for you and you want to use some free whatever, that's fine. What I find is that the free stuff is less and less accurate and doesn't give you alternate numbers as often as some of the paid stuff, right? And paid stuff, what am I talking about? I'm talking about companies like Mojo Dials or Land Voice or Vulcan 7, right? Or you could subscribe to like Cole Realty Resource, which you might be able to get some numbers one by one out of, right? All of those are opportunities. They all cost some money, yes. And if you're doing this daily, if it's a consistent lead generation practice for you, I encourage you to have a system around it where someone else is delivering numbers to you so you don't spend and waste your time thinking that you're doing all this expired work when you're spending very little time on the telephone with potential sellers.
What's the approximate cost of these services?
That's a great question. And I don't know that I have an answer for you on that. A couple $100 a month, anywhere from $99 a month to a couple of $100 a month, depending on the service that you buy.
Rick, I think they can run like around 250 all the way up to maybe like Vulcan 7 is much more expensive, maybe 400, 500 a month, depending on what you're getting.
Yeah, and it depends on the program that you're looking for, right? Sometimes they come with dialing systems and headsets, and sometimes you just get a list of numbers, right? So what I would do is I would go on Google and Google real estate expired systems and see what comes up and call a bunch of companies and see what you can, or ask some of your colleagues, send a blast email out to some of your colleagues to say, hey, I'm looking to see who uses what to get expired numbers or other telephone numbers and see what comes back to you. Anna.
So whoever in Jen's Henry Productivity Coach, you can request from her as well, expired and neighbors' phone numbers, and she will provide for you.
Yes, productivity coaching clients do have access to Cole Realty Resource through productivity coaching if you are a member of the productivity coaching program. You can just see Jen or Daniela or Margaret around that, and they'll get you what you need. You do have to belong to the productivity coaching program, though, in order to utilize that service. All right, last call. Any other questions on expireds? Issues that you're worried about, things that somebody might say to you on the phone that you're concerned about that we should talk about? Any other ahas or concerns about the process?
I have a question.
Yes, Carly.
How would you handle it if somebody said to you, well, what makes you think that you could get it sold when like my other agent couldn't?
Yeah, so I have a couple of thoughts on that. First, the first thing I will say to you, and I know this sounds like a cop-out, right? So I'll start with what sounds like a cop-out, because it's not meant to be. It's just experience tells me that what I'm about to say is true. If you will follow the script and close for the appointment, more times than not, these questions that you're concerned about don't get asked. Instead, you just get the appointment. And again, I know how that sounds, trust me, because until I actually did it and proved it myself, I would listen to people like me say that and be like, yeah, well, that's a nice way to avoid the question. However, any of you who have experienced expireds at a high level would agree that at some point, if you follow the script and close for an appointment, you don't get asked some of those follow-up questions. Now, that's not 100% of the time, right? And when those things pop up, you do need to have an answer for them. So now let me give you some answers that you really wanted to hear. So some objection handlers that I would pivot to if asked that question, like what makes you think that you can get it done? One of the things that I used a lot was, great question. And we can have that discussion in full when we meet either at 4:30 or 6 o'clock. I would repivot back to the ask for the appointment, not answer it on the telephone. Or I would say, that's a great question. I find that the answer often takes longer than we currently have and includes some great visuals, which I'd be happy to share with you at 4:30 or 6 o'clock this evening. So again, it's a little bit of an answer, but then a pivot to a close. The other thing I used to use pretty regularly was, and again, if this is not you, I'll give you a version that can be you. Carly, that's a great question. I happen to specialize in getting homes sold that didn't sell the first time around. And we can talk more about that when I see you a little bit later. Did you say that 4:30 or 6 o'clock worked better for you? So now I'll give an answer and then pivot again to the close. Now, if you don't feel like you have an expertise in selling homes that didn't sell the first time around, you can always make a small change that I told you about the other day. What would your small change be?
I work with a team.
Yes, so you change the pronoun to, great question. My team and I have specialized in getting homes sold that didn't sell the first time around. And we can talk some more about that later today when we see each other. Did you say 4:30 or 6 o'clock was better for you? So those are some objection handlers that I use. Again, at some point, you start to recognize the traps, because the people on the other end of the phone, they all say the same things. Just like you have a script, they have a script as well. They just don't know that it's a script. And they say things like Carly just said, well, What makes you think you can get the job done? Don't fall into the trap, because the trap is, well, you know, I sold 3 other homes in your neighborhood recently, and I have a really good track record. You know, I was a top producer in my company last year. That's the trap, because now you sound just like everybody else. The win for both you and them is to pivot for an appointment, because they'll get a better answer from you in person anyway, right? Validate, though. When a question is asked, that's a great question. I get asked that a lot. I use the same script when people say, well, you know what can you do differently? Right? It's a kind of a version of that same question. What are you going to do differently than your last agent? So you could give the short, snarky answer. Short, snarky answer is, well, I'm going to get your home sold. It's not my favorite, though, because it's short and a little bit snarky. What are you going to do differently? That's a great question. And it takes a little bit more time than we currently have on the phone. And by the way, I adapted this script because I used to say that, and that used to be the end. And one time somebody said, I don't know, I have all the time in the world. Like, oh, oops, I wasn't prepared for that one. So I adapted the script to, that takes a little bit more time than we currently have on the telephone, and includes some really great visuals to explain that effectively. What time did you say made sense for you? 4:30 or 6? Remember, you always want to be pivoting back to the appointment. Diana Kokoska taught me that it takes at least 5 times. You ask for the appointment at least 5 times. Some of you learned 7, depending on where you got your information, right? And here's what I know is that for most real estate agents, you ask 0 to 1 time. If we know you have to push to 5 in order to create success, and you're asking 0 to 1 times, is it any wonder why you may not have as many expired appointments as you plan on? Because you're just not closing enough. You've got to keep pivoting to asking for the appointment. Because here's what's real. The psychology says when you ask the first time, if they push back, and you ask the second time and they push back, most people won't push back a 3rd time. And here's what I knew. Even if someone wasn't like instantaneously in love with me, oh my goodness, where have you been in my entire life? Thank God you called me. Because just by the way, that rarely happens. Rarely happens, if ever. Even if they just give me the appointment because I've asked 3 or 4 times, I'm okay with that. I've still won the appointment. I'm still going there to help them. And I need to be there in person in order to actually have them sign a piece of paper to allow me to create the result they're asking to be created. So I'm okay if the reason they give me the appointment is simply because I outlasted them, because I'm still coming from contribution. I'm still looking to have that face-to-face to find them a path forward and help them to create the closing that they're looking for. How we get there is less important to me than that we get there. Make sense? Here's the other thing I want to just mention to you. You just can't take things so personally. Remember this, when you dial a stranger, they don't know you. So if they're mean, which I can tell you, have I had some mean in my career? Sure. Have I had some short or rude? Sure. But the vast majority of people that I would reach out to on the expired front were not rude or mean or nasty or insulting or short. And I very rarely had somebody just hang up on me. Instead, what I found was people who were frustrated and confused and needed help, and were appreciative of the fact that I was calling them to offer them some kind of assistance forward. That's what I found. Part of that is a mindset thing. Part of that is you find what you seek, right? I just sought people to help. And so that's what I found. What you focus on expands, right? The other simple reality is, oh, I lost what I was going to say. Lisa, rescue me. Tell me what I was going to say. No, go ahead. What's your question or comment? Lisa, go ahead.
I'm sure you've experienced, maybe you make the appointment, then they call back later and they cancel it or send you an email. Do you still then like keep reaching out?
So yes, have people canceled appointments on me ever? Yes. Didn't happen terribly often. I will say, from an expired perspective, if I was out calling them the morning of their expiration and had that conversation and set that appointment, rarely did it get canceled. However, when it did, if they sent me an email, I would call them. Hey, I just got your email. Tell me what's changed. Right, and I would utilize the information from earlier in the call. Oh my goodness, are the grandchildren moving north to you? Well, no. Oh, okay. Well, tell me what changed, right? With Donna's example, if she canceled the appointment, I'd call back. Hey, I just got your email. I'm just a little confused by it. Have you decided to launch the business here instead in cold, snowy, icy Connecticut? Donna says, oh, well, no. However, you know, our last agent called and said that, you know, he just promised to do things differently and make something happen. I completely understand. Trust me, I understand loyalty. Donna, let me just ask you a really quick question. Do you feel like you owe it to yourself to make the very best decision possible? And forgive me for saying so, you don't owe me anything, and you don't owe your previous agent much of anything. But knowing that you owe yourself the absolute very best to make the best decision possible, I would encourage you to see the benefit in meeting with me for just those 20 or 30 minutes. And if in our time together, you make a decision that we don't move forward together, I completely respect that. But I do believe that you owe it to yourself to make the very best decision possible. And that includes seeking out some additional paths forward. Would you agree? Great. So let's just keep that appointment at 4:30. I don't mind. I canceled someone else for you, so I'm happy to, and we'll keep it short. P.S. Another thing that I used to do a lot with my expired appointments was make it sound like I was canceling something else when I was setting the appointments. So when I would say to Donna, I have some time later at 4, or you know, I can move something and be available at 6 as well, because I want people to feel like I am clearing the decks for them. They are my focus right now. Did I have something else? Yes, I'm going to move that so that I can make myself available to you. It's just another small little strategy that I think makes people feel important. Anything else? Questions, comments, concerns? Are you excited about expireds? You should be. They're fun. They're awesome. Remember, don't take it personally. They don't. Yes, Eric.
Question, but like I'm kind of in the woods, so just let me know if you cannot hear me if I cut out. So I noticed you keep saying like expires and calling them right away, like the next day after they expire. Do you think that it makes a difference in your the response you get from customers when you're calling them a day after expired versus like a couple of months after a listing has expired, or it's pretty much the same?
So that's a great question. Let's talk about expired follow-up, and that'll answer that question, right? So the examples I gave you and we spent most of our time on is, all right, have the expired conversation, use the script, get the appointment, go list the house, right? It would be lovely if that happened every single phone call you made, and yet that's not real life, right? Sometimes you don't get people on the telephone. Sometimes you get people on the telephone, you don't get an appointment, right? Those are all real outcomes and real experiences. What I would encourage you to do is now focus on what's my follow-up plan. So I have some coaching clients who are really heavy into expireds, and one of them, he has a system where he calls expireds in the morning, right? And because to me, you always want to be first. That's what I did when I was calling expireds, and that just, what does that mean? I used to get into the office at 7:30 and start dialing expireds by 8. A lot of you will roll your eyes and say that's way too early. I understand that you think it's way too early. My goal was to catch people at home before they left for work and or be first, because I didn't want other people in front of me clogging the works. I wanted to call, get the appointment, and be done, right? So for me, that was 8 o'clock in the morning. I know Gary tells a story that I think he was calling even earlier because he found one of his competitors started to call at the same time he did. So he just backed it up a half hour. I will tell you that every once in a while when I would call expireds, I would get someone to say, hello. It could totally tell I woke them up. And so what did I do? Said, hi, this is Rick Scott. I just noticed that your property came off the market as an expired listing. And I was just curious if you were interested in getting your home sold. And they would say, okay, who is this? You just woke me up. Oh my goodness, that was certainly not my intent. My apologies. Although I am glad I did, because every minute you're off the market is a minute that the best buyer may be passing you by. And so I'm just curious, are you still interested in getting your home sold? Well, yes, I guess. And boom, we're off and running, right? Or no, do you think you could call me back in an hour? Sure. I mean, if someone really was woken up and asked me to call back in an hour, I'd call back in an hour. Mostly, however, we're just going to have that quick conversation. Hey, if they're drowsy, maybe they give me a faster appointment. Right, but what's my point? My point is, did I wake somebody up every once in a while because of the hour I was calling them? Sure. Did I want to go and beat myself with a wet noodle? Because no, because I'm calling them for their own good. Right? The phone call I'm making is to help them create success, getting their most valuable asset sold. If that steps on somebody's toes because they slept in one morning, like I don't take that on myself. Instead, I wrap that around to say, yeah, I'm kind of glad I got you up because we have work to do. Right? We've got to get you back on the market. There's only one way to get a sold sign in front of your house, and that's to be on the market. You're not on the market now. Let's, right? I am so glad I called. Whew, we dodged a bullet together. Make sense? I forget what I was asking by saying that.
I have one more question for you, Rick.
Yes.
Do you only do so? In your experience, have you only done like expired calls? Have you ever went and did a door knocking for an expired, or sent out a flyer or marketing or something to their mail?
Yeah, great question. Yep, and so I'll give you those answers. I realized I didn't finish your first question. So Erica's first question was, I was telling you about a program, right? So one of my coaching clients, he has a program that says if he doesn't reach somebody in the morning, he'll call back at noon and then call back again at dinner time. So he'll call 3 times in that first day. If he doesn't get somebody on the phone, then he puts them in a follow-up system and calls once a day for the next 5 or 6 days. So there's a week's worth of outreach, or until they go back on the market, right? And then after that, they go into a more of a weekly follow-up, so that he keeps reaching out, but it's not quite every day, and it's not quite more than once a day. He also has a mailing that goes out. If he doesn't reach them that first day, on day 2, the mailing goes out, so it reaches them on day 3. And then he'll follow up on day 4 about the mailing. When I was doing expireds, it was mostly calls. I did have a mailed expired program that I did to more of the outer reaches that I would then follow up with a phone call. It was fairly successful. I did take a couple of listings that way by just kind of sending out a package. I used to do a couple of things to set myself apart. I made sure in the beginning, I used to go to mailboxes, etc. Hold on, let me just pause the recording a second. I pivoted away from that, and instead what I did was I started my own courier company. And so what I mean by that is I had crack and peel labels. It was called Express Delivery. And I had crack and peel labels done with my Express Delivery logo, and the return address and the lines for the current address. And I would fill out that crack and peel label, and I would stick it on an envelope with all of my expired stuff in it, my package in it. And I had a family member who worked for Express Delivery who was out of a job, who would go and deliver all my packages. And so the idea was the sellers thought that I hired an actual courier company to deliver my package to their doorstep. If they were home, there were scripts involved, and the person delivering them would call on the way over. And if they got somebody, say, hey, this is Mark from Express Delivery. I have a couriered package from Rick Scott at Keller Williams Realty. At the time it was Century 21, but we won't use that. At Keller Williams Realty, do you think you'll be home in the next 5 or 6 minutes? I'll come to the front door, and they would have to sign for the package, and that was done that way. If he got the machine, the script was the same. This is who I am, courier service from Rick Scott at Century 21. If you're not at home, please note I will leave the package outside of the front door, because what we wanted to make sure people knew that it was coming and knew that where it was, because some people come in and out of the garage, you leave it at the front door, and they get it 3 weeks later when they finally open the front door for something else, right? So I had systems in place that would deliver written expired stuff after the fact, and then I would follow up. Again, the more relevant, the more efficient and effective path is on the telephone. I did have some success after the fact, though, with packages that I would follow up with, if that answers all that, Erica. Carly.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
What type of material would you put in the package?
Yeah, so that's another great question. And what I might do is save that answer for when we talk sellers in a week and a little bit. We'll go through the pre-listing packages. Mostly, I took a pre-listing package, which had marketing materials and testimonials and a little cover letter and some generic kind of market stats, nothing specific to the house, but generic, like year-to-date kind of market stats for the town, stuff like that I would build. My cover letter always said that I had an expertise and I specialized in getting homes sold that didn't sell the first time around. And for my expireds, I would always do some version of something kind of hokey. I'll give you some examples. For a while, I had packages delivered for expireds that were I had all my documents and stuff like in a box, and I filled the box with hay, and the letter was, my cover letter was sitting on top, and the cover letter in big bold letters at the top said, ever feel like finding the right real estate agent was like finding a needle in a haystack. And then of course they would go through the hay, and the bottom of their stuff was me. So I was the needle that they finally found. I had caution tape, caution tape. I had custom caution tape made that said, caution, the contents of this package may cause your home to sell. And that also was on the cover letter. I used to do like dice in the package, and the whole marketing idea was, ever feel like getting your home sold is like the role of it, or like, is like, rolling dice or something like that. I did scratch offs, don't leave the sale of your home to chance, all of those kinds of things, like goofy things, but they set me apart, I thought, and they showed that I was willing and able to dive into some version of marketing, which in Fairfield County can be important to send that message that you have some kind of a marketing brain. If you're marketing yourself, you can market their house. For a while, I actually experimented with sending signed contracts or sending completed contracts saying, hey, I noticed your house came off the market. Here's my package. We specialize in getting homes sold that didn't sell the first time around. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Number 1, please sign the enclosed contracts where indicated. Number 2, put in the self-addressed stamped envelope. Number 3, pop in the mail and we'll take it from there. And I probably took 3 or 4 listings when I was doing that over the course of probably almost 2 years, maybe 18 months, 3 or 4 times where people actually just did that. They got my stuff, they signed the contract, they sent it back, and I would call them and say, hey, great, I'm thrilled to be in business together. Let's have a conversation about your price. Because I would always use the price that it came off the market at, and then we'd have a conversation before, but they signed the contract without even meeting me, right? So there's so many different paths forward with how you can create success here. Don't rule any of it out. I know we're over time, so Carly, your question will bring us home.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to put my hand down. You just answered my question.
Oh, good.
Thanks.
Sure thing, right? So recognize, guys, that your expired packages can be as exciting or as unexciting as you choose to make them, right? I like things that set me apart. I always liked to kind of feel like people thought I was going the extra mile. So I didn't want to hire a courier, and I didn't really want to start my own courier company. So I utilized someone who needed a job anyway and paid them $25 every time they went, but I made it feel like I had my own courier company, right? With the things I described to you. Be out of the box, go the extra mile, people will hire you. All right, guys, so tomorrow we will start you'll start at 3 o'clock with Debbie. It's Wednesday, so you'll start your command work at 3. At 4 o'clock, we'll pick up. We're gonna go quickly through agent-to-agent referrals and farming and door knocking. And then I'll talk with you a little bit about some homework for as we bring the lead generation and business source conversations to a close. And then we will dive right in and start on the buy side with some buyer scripts and conversation around financing and more fun stuff. So that's tomorrow. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate your time and talents. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.